Welcome to Birth at Work, the podcast where we dive into the real, unfiltered stories of what it's actually like to navigate pregnancy, birth, and early parenthood while building a career. I'm your host, Krislyn Powell. Each episode, we sit down with working parents who share their honest experiences, the victories, the setbacks, the moments of doubt, and the strategies that actually work. Because let's be honest, most workplace policies weren't designed with pregnancy and new parenthood in mind. And it's time we talked about what that really means for the millions of us trying to grow families while growing our careers. Hi, I'm Krislyn Powell, and today I am joining you solo for this episode of Birth at Work. I have thought about ways that I wanted to structure these different episodes, and some of them I'm coming to you on my own and sharing a little bit about what my story looks like, whereas others I'm bringing some dear friends along the ride to talk about their journeys and experiences and sharing intimately about pregnancy, childbirth, and raising kids while also having a career. So today I want to tackle a topic that was a big realization for me early in my journey as I navigated a career and took on a job that I was really excited about and really shaped my career in many ways. However, it was also the beginning of my journey as a mother and left me some scars along the way. So the topic that I do want to address today is overwork, and also just a trigger warning here, I am going to be speaking about miscarriage and loss. So for any of you who it's just not time to listen to that type of content, or it's not a fitting subject matter, I completely understand and encourage you to explore other episodes. But I do think this is relevant, especially for those of us who have experienced this, and even for folks who maybe haven't, but are early in their career and have the potential to experience this if they aren't mindful and intentional about how they are setting boundaries. And with that all being said, I'm just going to share a little bit about my story, and we're going to go back starting at square one. So I have had a very generalist, squiggly career and have really enjoyed all of those squiggles and pivots and curves along the way. I have done many different lines of work, including event management, communications, community management, project management, program management, employee experience, learning and development, and the list goes on and on and on in various industries, including residential, corporate, tech, government, city, town, internet, you name it. I've probably touched it in some way, shape, or form. Health and wellness as well. All of these things have left me a mark, right, on my career and my ability to learn and grow. Let's just scoot back a little bit. Obviously, early in careers, many of us start out with internships following our degree, or we take specialist roles, coordinator positions, and a lot of that happened for me early on. I even had a director position early on with a nonprofit, and that was really cool too. But one of my most pivotal positions that I took was in event management, and I was in a city. I was managing really large scale events and programs, and I was loving my work. A lot of that allowed me to create community programs, bridge divides between community members, and get them more well acquainted with the city that they lived in and help them understand the beauty and place that it was, not just a space. And I really love that we brought people together for traditions and built community in that way. I even got to make some cool programs that had never been done before and work with some really amazing artists. It was such a fulfilling experience for me. However, I also experienced what I now understand to be as burnout during that role. Burnout has revisited me multiple times in my career, and I certainly wouldn't segregate that particular role to being the only cause of burnout in my life. But it was a role where I was required to be in contact with many different people, many different hours of the day, and also be on my feet for long hours of the day during heavy event season. I had to understand and be aware of all logistics related to staffing, budgets, operations, city layouts, program support, all vendors, attendees, security, pretty much everything from top to bottom. And we had a very small team at the time as well, so we all wore many different hats. Around that time, my husband and I were early into our marriage as well. When I joined the role, I got married shortly after, and it was such a happy time for me. But about a year later, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it was more than a year later. It was 2 years later. 2 years after we got married, we had been trying to have a baby and we got pregnant. And it was just really exciting, but I will also say it was also a really challenging time in the marriage for us as well. I think not a lot of people talk about how challenging it can be early into marriage, and I also was raised in a really religious household and still have those religious values today. And we had a short engagement and we're still, I mean, truly, I feel like getting to know each other 2 years in. So there was a lot tied up in that. It was just a really sensitive time. So while we were so excited for our little one, there was also things that we were navigating as newlyweds. I'd say you're still newlyweds for the first few years, and you're establishing a home life, a routine, supporting each other in work endeavors and other personal projects. And we had just gotten a dog and we're getting another one. When we found out I was pregnant, we had already planned to get another puppy. So we just thought, oh, we'll just raise the dog with the baby. Haha. And all of that was going swimmingly until I hit event season. By no means do I blame my experience on my role that I had. But again, at the time, I was very young and didn't understand how to set all of the adequate boundaries so that I wouldn't burn out. And I was always available. And I was always happy and positive and always trying to lean in. With all of that being said, I also had a couple things happen in my personal life. And so I just want to take a pause here and recognize that we as human beings have other things that we're dealing with outside of work. And so me thinking that, fresh into marriage, fresh into a new job, fresh into a move, fresh into pregnancy, thinking that I could just be happy, go lucky, and do everything all the time perfectly was really unrealistic. But I didn't know it at the time. Deep breath. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, but I also was exercising a ton, which exercise we know isn't bad, but I think I was overexerting myself in different ways and maybe undereating at some points too. I mean, I love food, but I would say that my habits are different now than they were then. And what I understood to be healthy now is different than it was then too. And I think with time and research, we've understood different ways to incorporate exercise and nutrition to have peak optimum health and wellness. Again, all of that being said, I did experience a loss in my life around that time as well. My grandfather passed away. And initially when I found out I was pregnant, I checked in with an OB, did all the standard stuff, found out my grandpa passed away a few weeks later, followed all the protocol of the OB. With the loss of my grandfather, I found out, we were going to drive to the funeral. It was a pretty long road trip early on in the pregnancy, which I didn't think would be a bad thing. Again, in this situation, I think very differently about navigating pregnancy and my ability to make decisions and have sovereignty in those decisions versus letting a provider tell me what's what. And when I checked in with my OB, they said, yeah, no problem. Road trip's fine. Lots of other things later, right? Funeral happened. Road trip was rough. I get car sick pretty easily, and I was already nauseous that first trimester. Tried to sleep a lot, came back, and then we had event season where I was working 70-hour weeks, most of them on my feet. As you can imagine, with the stress of lots of different things taking place, my body responded. And it responded in a way that I wasn't expecting. One Saturday that I had spent several hours in the office by myself preparing for an event that wasn't until the next week. I just wanted to purely get caught up and knock a bunch of hours out on a Saturday that I wasn't being paid for, by the way. It was salary, so, coming in on a Saturday and doing a bunch of extra hours, you're not getting anything for that. I was really hungry that day. I had skipped breakfast, and I walked over to Whole Foods and grabbed some really tasty lunch. Came back and was eating, and my stomach was kind of hurting, and then I went to the bathroom and I noticed some spots of blood. I instantly thought about what could be and then kind of banished it from my mind. It's not possibly what it is, but in fact it was. I actually didn't have blood again until several days later. It was about 5 days later, the day before a massive event, which would have been the day after a massive holiday, and a holiday that we all come together and have gratitude for. But instead, I was sitting in my bathroom at 3 a.m., from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. with terrible cramping and hemorrhaging over the bathroom toilet. I don't say any of this to be dramatic or seem like I'm not connected to the experience either. I mean, truthfully, this is the first time that I'm recording a story version of it. Though something else that helped me process it was recording a short video clip of just kind of how I coped and having my sister set that to music. I still have that, which is really memorable for me. But a lot of things happened. You know, I kept telling my husband, it's nothing. Let's just call the doctor. The doctor always said, call them if there's blood before we call the hospital. And so I just kept waiting as I was bleeding. And then at 7 a.m. when the doctor's office opened, we called and they told us to go to the ER. And my husband grabbed the dogs, took them to our in-laws' home. And when he came back, he came to get me out of the bathroom. And I stood up and fainted. Then he called the ambulance and had to revive me. And I was taken to the ER, and it was really a difficult situation. There was a baby in the ER that had RSV that was right next to me, and then I was sitting there continuing to bleed on the mat. And after some time, taken back from an ultrasound and told that the baby was no longer with us. I would make so many decisions differently looking back on my experience. I did have to go through a DNC at the hospital because I had lost too much blood and I could not survive the passing naturally at home. And I couldn't even sit up at that point. I just remember telling my family and friends who were reaching out that were close to me, I'm so sorry. I just remember saying, I'm so sorry. I tried so hard. I'm so sorry. And I was physically weak for a long time. Mentally, I was in hell for a long time as well. I remember coming back to work and after about a week, and it was definitely too soon, but I also wanted to be distracted. And I tried to jump back into some events that I was helping manage. And I remember distinctly feeling like that would be my last event season. For whatever reason, I loved the events. I loved what I was doing, but I knew that it wasn't sustainable for me and that I needed to start to consider another path, but I didn't know what that looked like. All this to say, that was the fall right before, well, the fall winter, right before COVID. So when spring came around and I got an opportunity to do something else, it was the right timing because all events were shut down anyway. What interesting timing. I actually, when the due date for my baby came around too, later that June, I had started a new job and it was my second day on the job and I was on my way to get lunch and I was in a car accident. One that probably would have severely injured myself and the baby if we had both been in the car together. It was so wild. It was on the exact day that the baby was supposed to be born, which, I mean, granted, I probably would have been not in a car. But as you can just reference from all of this, it's interesting the way that things played out, the string of events. But what did I learn from all of this? I learned that it's okay to set boundaries of time to heal, that it's okay to stop doing all of the things and that I didn't need to be happy all of the time. And I could say, I'm not doing okay. And I could ask for help and I could pause and I could focus on something that's right for me versus what was right for a company or relationship, something I was involved in. Again, I don't attribute the miscarriage purely to my work environment, but I know that it played a role, just like experiencing grief through a family member loss and being overstressed and under eating or over exercising and having challenging communication in a relationship and having a lot of life changes, but also giving up my authority to understand what was right for me and my baby and just going right along with jumping into a long road trip or saying, oh, it's fine because my OB said it's fine. That eventually led me down a path of advocating for myself and what I needed in support in a workplace environment, in my relationship, and then also in my medical providers and my team. I don't think that pain is something that I would wish on anyone. That experience was harrowing, and I still know that that baby is mine and that I'm connected to that baby, and I always will be. And I'm still so sorry that that happened, and know that I tried so hard with the knowledge and the information that I had. But what happened wasn't right. And I'm hoping in sharing this experience that someone who wants to better understand it or has experienced it can find some way to connect with the depths and layers of what that experience is and understand that our health comes first. And as mothers, we have distinct intuition of what our baby needs and what we need. And despite the fact that the world keeps turning, because it will, and that money keeps burning, because it will, we don't have to be productive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can rest, we can ask for help, and we can sure as hell be healthy and happy and have wonderful pregnancies moving forward, which I have and I still will. But a lot has had to change. So if you're finding yourself in a situation where burnout is regular, and you're not getting the support that you need, and you're wearing a million hats, and maybe there's things sensitive that are coming up in relationships, or you're turning all of your decision making over to a medical provider instead of doing your own research, I strongly encourage you to weigh the pros and cons, ask questions, ask more questions, set boundaries, have conversations, and mindfully, maybe even prayerfully, think about what is best for you and your baby. I also just want to say my heart goes out to all of the parents, especially mothers who have experienced something like this. It is so challenging, and I am so sorry for the fact that you had to experience that or are experiencing it. And I have a lot of compassion and space in my heart for people who have had a similar experience and gone through loss. It's really difficult. But I also know that there is hope on the other side and that good things continue to happen. And despite the challenges that we might be facing and have to go through, we often do find that there are rainbows, sometimes literally on the other side. I did have my son, who's now 3. I got pregnant with him about a year later, and it was such a happy occasion for us. He's the light and joy of my life. And again, just coming on here to say, I wanted to address this specifically because it's something that has happened in my life. And I had, coworkers who said, take all the time you need, but didn't quite understand the situation. And then I had coworkers who didn't say that and didn't have compassion. And I had to be very intentional about who I disclosed the information with, that I had experienced a loss as well. And even looking back, I think I would have done things a little differently with that too. So just know that you don't have to share your news with everyone, and you can share it with people who really matter. And I hope this helps ease something in you, some level of burden. And know that I am here to continue the conversation if that needs to happen. You need some support. Thank you for listening. That's a wrap on today's episode of Birth at Work. If our topic resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Connect with me on social or via email. Your experiences and questions help shape future episodes. Remember, you're not alone in this journey of balancing career and family. Every challenge you're facing, someone else has navigated too, and every victory you celebrate, big or small, deserves to be recognized. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other working parents find these conversations when they need them the most. And if you know someone who could benefit from hearing these stories, please share this episode with them. Until next time, remember, you don't have to choose between your career dreams and your family dreams. You're already proving that every day. Thanks for listening to Birth at Work. I'm Krislyn Powell, and I'll see you next time.